Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marche, the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guest and get started, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we're thrilled to bring you this educational presentation today. And we have a returning guest, Debbie Elder, who has spoken to us several times before. We're really excited to have her here. If you have a question today, please go ahead and use the chat box. You are muted, but the chat box is open, and we do encourage you to ask questions during the presentation today, and I will make sure to let Debbie know, and she will answer them as appropriate during or after today's event. If we don't get to your question, go ahead and leave your phone number as well, and we'll make sure someone reaches out to you after today's event to take care of that. So once again, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to chat. We want this to be as educational as possible. Well, I'd love to introduce you to today's speaker. Debbie Elder is the nation's leader in motivating students to be peak performers. Her varied background includes running the disciplinary unit at the Calgary Young Offender Center as a therapeutics foster parent, a homeschooler, a college planner, and an after-school program director. Currently, she owns Shady Oaks Primary School, and she loves to share her incredible knowledge in simple steps that can be implemented immediately. She has experience speaking to students, teachers, corporate America, entrepreneurs, and people who want to be successful at life. And Debbie, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here and then turn the time over to you.
Thank you so much. All right. We just get set up here. All right, we're ready to go. And as Marche shared, please put your ideas, thoughts, comments, questions in the chat. It's really fun when it's interactive. So we would really like to work with that. Oops. Oh my goodness. Hang on a minute. Technical difficulties. Here we go. All right. So we are going to talk about connecting today. We know how important that is, especially having gone through this pandemic. And, you know, we lost so much in that pandemic, but we really put a highlight and really put a laser light on what it is we appreciate and do care about one another. I know I've been talking to several colleagues, friends, neighbors, and so many of us are not returning back to work. I am at work, and because I run a school, it's an important place for me to be, especially since they are young elementary school students. But many of my friends and colleagues are working from home. And so being able to unite your team has become more important than ever before. And you're not running into each other at, you know, the coffee bar or the water cooler. You're going to have to come up with different ways to connect. We know here at our school, we have 6 pillars, and the first pillar that we rely on to unite our school and to keep us strong and moving in the right direction is the power of connection. And I believe in it so much that it's part of our curriculum. We teach our students different ways to connect with one another. And the tool that I want to share with you today is a great way to connect, to recognize a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about those that you work with and share your day with. So People Smarts was developed by Dr. Tony Alexandra, and he really has determined a way to categorize us that allows us to quickly assess where others lie. And that allows us to then communicate with them so that we're heard and that they hear us. And so a big part of today, I hope, will be opening up your self-awareness. There's many different forms that you can use out there. I know I'm certified as a DISC analyst, and that is a great sort of way to learn about yourself. If you haven't done a DISC assessment, DISC, I highly recommend it. They give you a lot of valuable information. People Smarts takes it to a much more common way to discuss it. It's just a little bit less formal. It's kind of fun. And this is why I like to speak on People Smart. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we all know what the golden rule, right? It's do unto others as you would like to be done unto. But I really want to encourage you to take it up a notch because you deserve it and go to the platinum rule. The platinum rule is to do unto others as they want to be done unto. We're all different. And I know that there's certain things that I like that may not be the same as what you like. And so let's say, for example, if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, one of those love languages is gifts. So people who have that as their love language like to receive gifts and they like to give gifts. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy gifts, but it's not my love language. And so if you really want to connect with me, you'd want to connect with my love language, which is words of affirmation. I like to be affirmed. And so although, as I mentioned, diamonds are a girl's best friend, they say, but I really like on a daily basis to be told how well I'm doing and what you appreciate that I've done. And so if you were going to apply the golden rule, you might give me what you think you'd like to receive, whereas the platinum rule really encourages you to give what the other person wants. So how do you figure that out? That's what today's talk is going to be about, is giving you some clues and just a little bit of insight and things that you can ask yourself about situations and different people so that you can start to be aware of the different sort of personality or behavioral styles. One of the things that we spend a lot of time here on our campus is teaching our children the importance of body language. We all know when we communicate that 55% of what we communicate comes through our body language. Only 7% are our words, and the remaining 38% is tone of voice. So really your body language gives you away. And if you're not really clear on what you're communicating through your body language, you can send mixed messages and you can come across as unauthentic. And we don't want that. So just some things to be aware of. I know back when I was working in college planning, one of the things I noticed was a lot of the up and coming juniors and seniors that I was working with had very little self-awareness. And so teaching them about People Smarts and giving them some insight and some questions to ask themselves about how they are going through life really helped to amp up their level of self-awareness. And I think really taking time to reflect and to really think about what we're doing is super important. Here on our campus, we end our day with a reflection time period. Sometimes we do it orally, where the students will articulate to each other and to me, what really worked well today? What do I want to repeat tomorrow? What do I want to make sure I bring into my life? And what didn't work so well? And how can I correct it or change it up or sort of look at it a little bit deeper to figure out, why didn't that work? Why didn't that land with me? Why didn't it feel good? And sometimes they'll request help from the group to kind of come up with different things that they could do to change it. And sometimes they're able to discern themselves what they need to tweak to make tomorrow a better day. And I think in our fast-paced society, we don't reflect enough. So I want to invite and encourage you to really start. Journaling is a great way to do it. Maybe you're going to record it into your phone. Maybe it's a conversation you have with your spouse at the end of the day. But if we're not evaluating what's working in our world, we're not improving. And I think improving both at work and in our personal life just allows us to continue to contribute at a higher level, which I know is important to you as it is to me. We want to be able to be adaptable and to be able to flex to what others are needing in the time. So when you are aware of what you need and what others need, you can be a little bit more flexible on how you get that need met. And I think that's really important because we know if you give enough people what they want, you will always get what you need. But you got to have the clarity to know what that is. And so many times we kind of get down a road that we're not really sure, where we're trying to get to, and we become very inflexible and unable to adapt. And I don't want you to get into that state. So being aware of the different behavioral styles, understanding people smarts is going to help you to be a little bit more flexible on how you meet the needs that you're trying to meet to get to your goals, to understand how you can improve by using those around you to help you with that. So you want to make sure that you're watching for clues in people. So as of now, you are all detectives. So welcome to the Sherlock Holmes group. And we are going to pull out our magnifying glasses and make sure that we're very dialed in and looking for the clues that others are giving us. So the first one you want to be aware of are some questions that you can ask. Is the person open or very self-contained? So think of perhaps maybe a movie character or a TV personality, maybe an Italian grandmother who's very loud and open and gives you big hugs and kisses when you come in. That's a very open person, as opposed to someone who's even their body language is contained, where they want to be maybe a little bit more tightly enclosed. They are less likely to share with you their opinions or their ideas, much more self-contained. So those are the two big questions. And then the next question to ask is the person open, direct, or are they indirect? And that will allow you to sort of set them into two different categories. And then from there, we can delve a little deeper into what the person is about.
I have a question here
yes,
about being direct or indirect. Can you give an example of that?
Sure. So someone who's direct is going to come right out and say what their question is, right? They're going to ask you exactly what it is they need to know. Whereas someone who's indirect, you all know that expression, sort of beating around the bush. They don't want to offend anybody. They come in a little bit more, less sort of hitting on exactly what they want. And they don't like to push issues. They don't want to assert their opinions very much. They really want to kind of tiptoe around, get to the point, but they don't want to come right out and just ask. So I might say to somebody, are you sure that's something you want to do? Because it doesn't look like something I'd want to do. Where somebody else might say, well, have you investigated this? Have you looked into this? A much more indirect approach. So when we look at what's up on the screen right now, direct people are very open in their opinions, in their thoughts, and even in being able to hear what other people's opinions are, right? They're not necessarily closed-minded. They're, again, very open-minded. They can tend to ramble a little bit. They can be very sociable, and they make decisions based on feelings. And that's the biggest determiner of a direct person is they'll use words where they'll give you clues like, well, I'm just feeling this quarter, we need to really push the marketing with this direction. Or I just have a feeling that this person's going to buy if we can approach them this way. And so listen to those key words when they're talking about feelings. It'll give you some insight as to their ability to be direct. Whereas an indirect person, again, more self-contained, has a much more monotone voice. They don't get excited and animated. Very closed body language. They have a very large personal bubble. So you're going to get closer to them and they're going to keep backing it up, right? They don't like you to be very close. Think COVID before COVID was a thing, right? They keep their 6 feet and they want to be distance. Very task orientated, and they make their decisions based on facts. They're going to do their research. They're not going to buy the next big TV until they've figured out and done, in some cases, a lot of research to figure out which one's going to meet their needs. Whereas person who operates on how it feels in their gut's going to walk in to Best Buy and just look at the one that catches their eye. So very different ways to make decisions. And as I'm sure you're listening to this, you can see, wow, there could be some real conflict in these two different approaches if people aren't aware and aren't embracing the needs and the personalities and the behavioral styles of the other person. And it really comes down to your ability to respect that not everybody makes decisions like you do. And the more we understand this, and I know the more I teach my students this, the less conflict we have on our playgrounds, in our classroom, the more empathy that we see, the better sharing of ideas, and the more open they are to hear other people's opinions and methodologies ways to approach things, and to sometimes even try something new, which for some of our students is a big step out of their comfort zone, as I know it is for even adults.
I have a question here about
Yes.
these different types of people. I mean, it's pretty regular to find those different types of people in an office environment or any sort of team. And so you said the key was what again? Was not necessarily having some people with the same personalities, but doing what?
I think it's important to recognize that people are going to approach problems and situations very differently, and to embrace that. I know that I have learned personally so much from watching how other people do things in ways that never occurred to me. Now, it doesn't mean that I embrace those changes or even necessarily try or do them, but it's always so interesting to watch how they may take an obstacle or a challenge and overcome it in a way that would never occur to me. And so I love to be with very diverse people and to learn all different ways and approaches, because I think it helps with our problem solving and helps us to be a little bit more inquisitive. And it also allows us to be very creative and to really use some critical thinking skills that we're not exposed to. I love to learn, and learning from people is my favorite way to learn. So I think that that was a great question, and thank you to whoever asked it. What we have up on the screen here are the 4 different behavioral styles, or the different sort of categories that were developed by Dr. Tony. So we have a director, a thinker, a socializer, and a relator. And I'm hoping, first off, by the end of this presentation, you can get an idea of which of these you think you fall into. I know that I had a friend of mine that was very similar to myself. And we did a DISC test only to find out we were identical in how we thought. And it was just so cool. We handle situations a little bit differently, but I love this kind of knowledge. And I'm sure that, this whole saying about opposite attract, there is some of that. And you may see your spouse or your children, your grandchildren, and again, the people you work with in these different roles. And I think, and my hope is it'll add some insight as to how you can better connect with them, and better understand why they do what they do. So let's dig in. So the first one we're going to talk about are directors. These are big picture thinkers. You think like Donald Trump on his show that he had where he was firing all these people that came on, right? He was a director. He was making decisions, very, very decisive. They have a big take charge attitude, and they have their biggest fear is looking soft. So this is what I am, just to give you an idea. I am a director, and I have a lot of people that surround me in my life that take my big ideas and break them down and actually get them done, right? I live up here with my big ideas, and I can see the outcome, but I don't always know the steps to get there, which is why you can't have an office filled with just directors, right? You need to have so all of these personality styles allow us to function really, really well. And I'm a big believer in concentrating on my strengths and not worrying so much about the areas where I might have weaknesses. I think it's important. And I had a really interesting conversation with a colleague yesterday about that in school, about, why are we trying to make these well-rounded students that are good in everything, when maybe they should really concentrate on their strengths so they can go be that for the world. So all different ways to look at things. When we think about directors, their key thing that they want to get, their key desire is results, right? Very, very driven. I'm very driven to get the next star, or to get the next profit margin, or to have the next big quarter. That's really something that is very important to me, and really allows me to keep going. It gets me up out of bed every morning because I'm going to keep pushing to the next level. Here, their motto is, I want it done right, and I wanted it done yesterday. That's right. We move very, very quickly. Our theme song is My Way. We can tend to be a little bossy. So when you're talking to a director, we kind of want you to get to the point and cut to the chase. So years ago, when I was using this same format to teach young students about how to interview for jobs. So think 16, 17-year-old males and females. We use this same presentation to encourage them to, when they went in for an interview, to look around the office and try to get an understanding of who were they talking to. Were they talking to a director, a relator, a socializer, or a thinker? So when you come in and talk to me, you better cut to the chase. I really don't want to know about your weekend. Like I do, but I don't. Right? If we're at work, I want to know, what do you need from me? How do we get this task accomplished? And what's next? Now, sometimes I've learned over the years to taper that a little bit, but if left to my own devices, I'm kind of like, let's just do this. And sometimes other personality styles can be very offended by that. So many years ago, I taught preschool and I was very focused. It was a part-time job. I was only there a couple of days a week. And so I was very focused on the children. Well, what I came to realize is the parents of these children needed, in some cases, more of my attention than their children did. And I had to find that out the hard way. I think a couple of the parents were like, man, she's kind of cold. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just very focused on the kids. And then I realized I had to share some of that focus with these maybe moms who had a rough morning, or dads who weren't really dialed into what their kids needed, and how could I help them with that? And so again, getting back to that reflection and really taking time to get clear on what your end result is, but how are you going to get there with the people that are on the bus with you, right? That whole expression of who's on your bus. You need to know who's there with you so that you can work as a team, and working as a team has some give and take. And I'm so excited that you're on this presentation with us today and learning these things, because it really is going to help you to really maximize how effective your team can be. That's coming from the director in me. So let's move on to the next group.
We do have a question here about, like, they said, I'm not a director, but I work with directors, and it's uncomfortable for me to approach my boss in a way that they're most comfortable with. So are there ways to work on that?
Absolutely. Great question. And it's really, it's getting out of our comfort zone, which is not comfortable for any of us, right? And recognizing, and sometimes, I don't know about you, but I like to be asked, how can I approach you? What's the best way to get my point across? So I know here at the school, we have a lunch one-on-one. I lunch with each of my employees every month. And through that process, I ask some very direct questions. As a director, I'm very direct, so that I can get to know them quickly, and they have an opportunity to let me know how best to approach them if I'm unhappy with something, or maybe to commend them on work that they've done. Some of them like to be sort of commended in public. Others are mortified if I was to say anything, just get so embarrassed if I was to call them out on something great that they did. They would prefer to have that quietly one-on-one, or maybe even in a handwritten note. So I think it is very insightful to ask the directors you're working with, what's the best way to approach you? What's the best time? Would you prefer I send you an email with an agenda of what I want to talk about, so we can really maximize our time together? I'm big on that. I don't like to go to meetings without seeing the agenda first. I don't really want somebody just coming into my office to just shoot the breeze and have a chat. I'm like, I got stuff to do. I don't mind doing that, but not now. So you let me know what you need, so we can sort of put the time in to make that happen in the most efficient possible manner. And I know for me as a director, efficiency is super important. If you were to come to my house, you would see my pantry is super organized. For no other reason than I hate to look for something when I need it, right? It's just so, it goes against everything. I don't like to be leisurely. I like to go in, get what I need, and move on to the next thing. So getting to understand what the needs are of the people you're trying to communicate with can really be beneficial. And it's so nice to be asked. Even the directors you're working with really appreciate it when you take the time to ensure that you're meeting their communication needs in the best way possible. The next group I want to talk about are relators, and they are group orientated. They are terrific listeners. They are team players, super tolerant. They don't like conflict at all. They collect things. So going back to the example of the students that I help getting ready for interviews, you might walk into a relator's office and see a collection of frogs or pigs or crosses on the wall, or something to indicate something that's really sort of warm and squishy and very personal about them that they like to display where they can see it at all times. They're very routine orientated, so they don't like change as a rule. They like things to be very traditional. They might do something once and love it. Now it's a tradition. We're going to do this every year. We're going to dress up for Christmas every year. We're going to, things that once they found that they enjoy, they want to continue. They don't like to be the center of attention. They really, really want to support, think a cheerleader, and they're going to cheer you on from the sidelines. Their key desire is harmony and stability. Their motto is don't rock the boat. They do not like conflict at all. And they would rather say nothing than incite any kind of conflict in the workplace. So you just need to be aware of that, and you need to watch body language, facial expression, things that they may be doing to indicate they're not comfortable, but they may never speak it to you. Their theme song is "You've Got a Friend." And the tips when dealing with someone who is a relator is they're ultra sensitive and they're big teddy bears. But one thing I've learned over my years in dealing with relators, it's almost as if they walk around with a little notebook in their back pocket, and they'll pull it out, and they may not say to you that you've upset them, but they turn to your page and they put a little X by your name. They never forget, right? And then they fold that book and they put it back in their back pocket. So they can tend at sometimes to be a little difficult to really, like, how you doing? I'm fine. I'm doing really fine. You're not looking very fine, right? Where they send mixed messages and can be someone to hold on to and harbor bad feelings. So because it's so uncomfortable for them to discuss any conflict. So just to be aware of that and to help them if there is something that's going on that you do need to work through with them, to be very cognizant of that. They don't like you to raise their voice to them. They are just really very chill and calm and really enjoy when things are moving along as they should. I know for me, I love change. I love to mix things up. I try to set my school up differently every year, so it's exciting for the children. But some of my teachers who are relators, that almost makes them uncomfortable. And certain professions you will find. So for example, in the helping professions, a lot of people who are relators will work in those professions. And also, I want you to be aware that relators, the highest population of people are relators. Directors have the lowest amount. So that's also something to know. And I'll share a personal story with you. When I was doing college planning, we would go out and speak to groups and share really good information. And then our business concept was then you would sign up for a complimentary consultation with me. You would come in my office. We would have a conversation about how I could specifically help you get your child into college and pay for it. And then I would give you 24 hours to make a decision. If you made your decision within 24 hours, you got a bonus. And it was typically $500 off the price of engaging me to work with you as a college planner. After I learned about this and got trained in DISC, I realized I was really working to get the very small percentage of the directors, because most of us don't make a decision in 24 hours, and not a big decision like hiring a college planner. They needed more time. So what I did was extend that offer and gave them 72 hours, and our client base went way up. So I was thinking everyone was like me, and they just aren't. So most people are relators. So that's something good to know. If you're not sure who you're dealing with, odds are they're a relator, and maybe they'll show you something different, but it's a good rule of thumb to start with. Next, we have our socializers. They're just all about fun, very spontaneous. These people would rather have an interview at Starbucks than in an office. How boring is that, right? They require gentle reminders because they're all about the fun. When you're talking to them and you have to give any kind of criticism, it's best to give the sandwich approach. You're awesome. I love the way you do this. What we've noticed is we might want to hone in a little bit on these skills, but because of the way you get along with our staff so well, so really sandwich those pieces of sort of things that they need to work on, or any kind of criticism between how awesome they are. They have a very strong need for universal approval. So as you can understand, that's why it's so important to make sure that you're pumping them up and that you're giving them recognition for things that they do very well on a regular basis. That really feeds them. And if you are the leader or the boss or the director, and you've got some socializers working for you, make sure you've got those Christmas parties going on and you're giving them an opportunity to have, fun coffee and bring in maybe kolaches a couple of Fridays a month, whatever you need to do. But be aware, these are the people that like to have that ping pong table in the lunchroom so they can think their ideas out as they're playing a friendly game of ping pong. So socializers are all about having fun and being with other people. Think of the people that like to be the sage on stage and like to be the center of attention, whether it's in a meeting in the conference room or holding court at the water cooler, right? They love the applause and all the excitement. Their motto is, you only live once, right? They like to have lots of fun. Their theme song is Celebrate, and their favorite subject is themselves. So you see a lot of socializers in sales. You can pick them out of a crowd. They're very great storytellers. They love to share with you different things that have happened in their life. They're very engaging, super fun to be around. They have a great power to persuade, which is also very much a gift that they share with you. And they love to talk. So if you've got a need for that in your organization, finding someone who's a socializer might fill that need for you. I know that putting people out to do networking and community service and to really be the face for your organization, this is a great person to choose for that role because they truly are energized by other people, as opposed to some of the other behavioral styles who can feel drained by people. Socializers love to get out there, and they also make a lot of their decisions based on how they feel as opposed to what they think. So they can be very spontaneous, as we mentioned earlier. Next, we have our thinkers. And our thinkers tend to be very cautious. They have a strong need to be right. They're very analytical. Quality is more important than quantity. They'd rather take the time to get it right than produce a whole bunch of widgets that may not exactly be perfect. They are very uncomfortable in large groups. So you might see thinkers in roles like a CPA, an accountant, different sort of jobs where they don't have the same needs to interact with others on a regular basis. And you can see the difference in the 4 different categories now of a socializer would, to put them into a cubicle is like death by cubicle. It's just awful for them, right? And having to be told, well, imagine being in a classroom like we are here, and all the little socializers are getting up and wanting to talk. And then you've got other students who really just need it calm and quiet so they can do their work. So being aware of the different sort of personality styles allows us to set up our environment to make sure that we're aware and cognizant of how we can meet their needs. So we have at our school quiet areas for those thinkers to work in. And we have areas where it's much more social, and the adaptable seating allows them to maybe sprawl out on beanbags and work in partners with someone else or in a small group to solve some math problems. And that's totally fine. And that's how they really like to work. And what we have found over the years, when we've let go of some of the traditional school must be done at your desk, one-on-one, or just by yourself, and allowed them to really sort of step into their behavioral styles and who they are, their production goes through the roof, their level of happiness and contentment has really increased. When you're able to do that with your staff and with the people that you work with, you bring out the best in everyone. And so being really aware of this, and I know we have spent a lot of our staff training time really dialing into figuring out what people's love languages are, what their level of people smart is, where do they really shine, what do they enjoy, and giving them time to do that self-analysis work so that when they show up to work, they're bringing them their best selves and they're aware of how to be the best they can be. And I think that really helps. I know it's made a big decision and it's really helped a lot in who I hire, because I'm looking for people that are going to fill various needs. And so knowing what their natural inclinations are really helps me to make sure that I'm putting them in the right role. When you're dealing with thinkers, they will do a lot of research. They are going to make their decision based on facts that they can uncover. So they are, going back to my example about the college planning, telling a thinker to make a decision to spend thousands of dollars in 24 hours really is that's not what they can do. That's not what they want to do. They really want to be able to check into my background, I'm sure, make sure the program we work with is legit, all of the things that they need to do to feel comfortable. Whereas someone like me who goes on their gut, I've met you in 5 minutes. I've already made my decision, right? I don't need 24 hours. I don't even need the rest of this hour complimentary. If I've come to see you, I made my decision. I'm a fast, decisive director, and that's the difference in the different styles. So thinkers, their clear desire is to have precision and accuracy. Their motto is everything in its place and a place for everything. Their theme song is Sounds of Silence. And tips, if you want something done right, give it to a thinker. If you want it done quickly, think again. And they're great planners, great problem solvers. And again, you can really maximize your effectiveness when you put the right people that you know, when you put your thinkers on this particular type of problem. There's things that they can do I just can't do. I don't have that kind of brain. I will get bored. Sometimes I just want to, it's good enough. Let's just move forward. And these people, and I have a couple of thinkers that I've worked with in the past that have done me so many great things and really saved me a lot of money, because they've just gone, hey, slow down. Let's look at it from this perspective. Let's really think about what we're trying to accomplish, because sometimes I get caught up in that big idea and I don't take the time to work out the small details. So filling your team with all members of the different perspectives can really be advantageous and really can help you to make sure that you're providing the best you can to the community that you're serving. Are there any questions or comments at this time before we continue?
We did have a couple questions. As you're going through this, one of the questions was, are there people who are a mix of these different types?
There is varying degrees, absolutely. And it's not uncommon when so for example, when I had my DISC results returned to me, in DISC, I was a high I and a high D, which means a director and a socializer. Those were the two that I fell under. And you could have any combination of these in any kind of percentage. So absolute great question. Very few of us fit into one little box, right? And which this is meant not to make it so general, but it really helps when you meet people the first time. Maybe you're at a networking event or you're socializing with a group after work and there's new people that have joined the team, or maybe there's been a merger. It gives you an opportunity not to put them in a box, but it really helps if you can say, oh, this person's a thinker and I'm going to try to relate to them and try to be aware of what their needs are. And then really pay attention, one, to see if I'm right. And two, to maximize how you connect with them. Because if I go up to a person who fits the role of thinker and I'm all loud and in their face and in their bubble, I'm going to make them uncomfortable. And when somebody's uncomfortable, you're not getting your best work from them and you're not getting their best ideas. And you really can kind of shoot yourself in the foot. So using this as something, and this is like a jumping off point, right? If you're really interested in following this a little bit closer and sort of diving deep into this, there's so many resources that are out there that you can use. And I would highly recommend it. It's fascinating work. There's a gal by the name of Vanessa Van Edwards who has made it her career to study people and in the behavioral sciences. And she has so many YouTube videos that's a great free place to start, right? If you're interested in this and learning in short snippets, different ways to read body language, to understand what people are trying to communicate to you in ways that they may not even be aware of, but that you can use, as I said, with your microscope and your detective and your magnifying glass to really understand and better connect with people, because we all know we bring to the table something a little bit more. We just kind of put a little more oomph into something when we feel a strong connection. And you'll hear people say, I don't know why, I just felt like we were like soulmates, or we just had this strong connection. And I wanted to give a little more. I wanted to be a little better. I wanted to make sure I pleased them. And I think that ability to connect with others and for them to feel validated, for them to feel heard, this is a great way to recognize the different sort of skill sets that each of these 4 behavioral styles bring to the table in ways that truly land with them. Telling a director that you really like how they thought something through, they're like, it doesn't have any it doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't stick. It falls right off. But to say that to a thinker or to a relator, yeah, now you're in their wheelhouse. And that really is something that they want to gather more of. Any other comments or questions that have come in?
Oh, let me go ahead and look back at my
Sure.
list here. We do have a question about what about the Myers-Briggs tests? Often that's used in to find out personality types as well.
It is. And Myers-Briggs is great. I prefer DISC, but that's just my personal opinion. Myers-Briggs can be very complicated. And I think, again, People Smarts are designed to be something that is very quick. It's something you can easily learn and you can apply right away. Right after this webinar, you can go out and start looking at different things that you can pick up on these different behavioral styles. Myers-Briggs is a little bit more in depth and a little bit more calculated. And this presentation today is really designed for you to find those styles in others, whereas I believe Myers-Briggs really gives you internal information. There's also the 360 that they've done. There's so many different tools out there that are available. And I think if you're interested in pursuing this, it's great information for you to have and then to share with others. I think once you know, the minute I knew what my love language was, I let people know. And I used to train teachers all over the country, and I would make sure that those teachers knew my love language before the end of my presentation, because the company that I worked for, I kept on salary if my evaluations from my audiences were good. And so I let all of my audience members know right before they had to fill out my evaluation that I'm a words of affirmation. And the best way to tell me today that you enjoyed your presentation is to write it on that evaluation. Oh my gosh, I had the best evaluations, right? I gave them permission. I gave them some insight on how to do it, and they responded. So sometimes knowing yourself and letting others have the ability to meet your needs is so impactful. And I think we all want to do what others want of us. We all want to help out. There's a strong need to serve. And I think part of our job as colleagues and maybe leaders in the companies that we're with is to make sure people understand how to serve us. And if you're making it something that you're not sharing because you haven't figured it out, well, this is a great place to start. And I'm sure many of you are sort of seeing where you may fall into some of these. And maybe it's just, I'm direct or I'm indirect. And that's a great place to start, right? So when you meet somebody, you can sort of figure out what category they are in. Then you've at least eliminated two of the different behavioral styles, right? And then you can sort of look into it. So your directors and your socializers are people who are going to make decisions based on how they feel. Whereas your relators and your thinkers, they want the facts, ma'am. And they're going to go and make sure they do their research and make sure that they totally understand. And you can't push those two behavioral styles into making decisions. They very much can stand their ground. And if you're going to see any passive aggressive behavior, it's typically in the relators or the thinkers, where they're just like, they're going to be polite, but you're not going to move them any faster. You're not going to sway them. They're going to stick to what they believe in, which is because, and oftentimes they've done their research and they strongly believe in their decision at that time. Whereas the other two personality styles, because they can make decisions very quickly, can sometimes be very flexible. So when we talked at the very beginning about being flexible and adaptable, if I was to go to Mexico for 3 months and learn to speak Spanish, that doesn't mean I've forgotten or I'm no longer an English speaking woman, but I've just learned a new skill. So just because I know and present as a director doesn't mean I can't flex a little bit when I meet a thinker or a socializer or a relator. And I have to be aware of that, because if I truly want to connect, I'm going to adapt a little bit. I'm not going to be manipulative. I'm not going to change who I am, but I'm not going to come in big, strong, loud with someone who that makes uncomfortable, because neither of us benefit. So a big part of understanding these different styles is just adjusting and being a little bit more adaptive to the people that are in the room with you, because that improves your ability to be heard and it gives them the permission to respond back to you so that you can hear them. And I think that's really something that's important to bring back and just remind our listeners that part of this is really, changing how you may word something, or even tone of voice, which we know 38% of communication is based on your body language. If you're working with a very self-contained person, that's not the one to walk in and give a big hug to before the meeting starts. You're going to make them very uncomfortable, right? And so to respect that not everybody is like you. And I know for me, when I teach my students, we kind of turn it into a game, and it really makes it fun. And we try to keep it at the forefront of our interactions with each other, and to be mindful and to really have that growth mindset of, you know what, I may not have everybody figured out yet, but I'm working towards that. This is something I'm really going to try and get to know the people I work with, whether it be in a professional level or even if it crosses into personal. So I truly understand, so I can be the best for them when I show up as me. And I think that's really important. And again, the more you know about yourself, the more you can share with others and let them know how best to communicate with you. And I've really worked hard with my staff to have that reciprocal back and forth so that we can be very efficient in our communication, but also very loving and have a lot of grace and understanding, so we can minimize hurt feelings and miscommunications and conflict, because ain't nobody getting ahead when we do that. So we really try to keep it as professional, but also, like I said, with grace and with empathy. So those are just really important things to be thinking about.
Here's another question that goes right along with what you were saying. I work with a thinker, and they have they take a long time to make decisions, and sometimes miss deadlines because of that. Is there a way that I can facilitate that thinker to make that decision faster?
Yes. So I know myself, when I'm working with a thinker, one, I have to be very careful to abide by timelines that may be very different than what I'm comfortable working with normally. I also need to provide them with as much information as I can so that they can make the decisions that they need to make. So I know with students, when you're teaching, there's different ways people learn, right? Some need to do it and feel it, and others need to hear it, and some need to see it. Well, in my classroom, we do all three, so that I can reach all of my students. And I think when you're dealing with these different behavioral styles, to be cognizant of it. And congratulations to this inquiry person who knows they're working with a thinker and can now afford them the opportunity and ask them, what else do you need? What other resources can I bring to you? Because I know if I'm going to go in and meet with someone who's a thinker and I need something from them, the easiest thing is to give them what they need so they can give me what I want, right? And I think it's unfair to expect someone who you know is a thinker to think quickly, because they're not. And then you're disappointed and they're upset that they've let you down. And so really looking at timelines with them, giving them the bandwidth, but also letting them know these are hard and set timelines that we need to address. How can I help you be able to make the decisions in the time frame that we've set aside for this, and really giving them access to resources so they can do that. There's a great story about, well, we don't write checks anymore very often. I'm getting ready this Friday in my financial literacy class for my 3rd through 5th graders to teach them how to write a check, just so they can say they learned it once. I'm sure they'll never use it. They Venmo everybody. But so just imagine you have these 4 personality styles and they're all balancing their checkbook. Remember when we had to do that? So the director says, balance checkbook. I'm just going to give it to my assistant. She can balance it for me. And the relator gets the whole family together, think kumbaya, and they're sitting around, and they just turn it into a really nice family event where everybody can share in the experience, and we can really, have a team building event as we balance the checkbook. And the social is like, balance the checkbook? I got 3 more checks here. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm going to go spend some more money. And the thinker is working really hard to balance it, and he's off by just a few cents. And the director realizes that, walks by, throws him a quarter, goes, dude, you're good for the next several months. Don't worry about it. So those different personalities really handle situations differently. And I don't think one is better than the other. I think they just have different strengths, like we all do. And being able to put people where they can excel with their strengths allows everyone to succeed at a faster rate. So just some things to think about.
We have a couple more questions here, and then I think we'll wrap things up.
Okay.
A question here is that, are there typical roles in a team or a company where certain types tend to land?
Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, so in the helping profession, you see a lot of relators. In the service industry and sales, you see a lot of socializers. With corporate C teams, you're going to see a lot of directors and that can cause problems, right? Because as directors, we want to be what? Oh, the boss, and there's just one, right? So now you get all these big CEO corporate people together, and there can be some tension. And sometimes you need that relator to come in and just sort of smooth everything out and just, come on, team, let's get back together. And so, yes, different professions are going to, my personality style would never be comfortable working in a cubicle, doing really detailed work. It's just not where I know my strengths lie. Can I do it if I need to? Yes. Would I rather hire a bookkeeper? Oh, heck yes. Right. And so knowing that and knowing where to put your time, your energy, and your money so that you can bring your gifts and your purpose, I think is really important. So studying this can really help you to align with what your best sort of game is and how to be best utilized by your company. And if it's something that you, after learning about this, and maybe you do a little bit more research, you realize, you know what? I don't know if I'm really serving where I am in my best way. And having a conversation with your leadership people to let them know, I just learned this about myself, and I'm wondering if I might better serve the team in this capacity. Might be a great thing to think about for your next, staff meeting or one-on-one with the people that you report to. Good question.
All right, we've got one more question here that we can cover today. Are there particular types that are complementary, like thinking about couples here, even in a family, or also, coworkers that work best together as far as complementary types?
That's a great question. And I know for me that I know where my weaknesses lie. I know where my holes are. And so I try to surround myself with people that is their strength. So as a director, I move very quickly and I can miss details. And I'm also incredibly optimistic. So going through all this COVID stuff, I have a member who was great to point things out. And, she's like, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but have you thought about this? Like, you just need to plan. I'm like, oh, that's never going to happen. So I know that about myself, and I'm open to having those people come in. And I think that's the big thing. So it starts with self-awareness, and then it starts with understanding the other sort of styles and knowing what you need and making sure those people are in the right place. You wouldn't want to put a thinking personality as the head of your sales team. One, they're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be very comfortable for them, and they're probably not going to do a great job. They might be better back at the office doing all the number crunching that you need, or coming up with complex answers to very complex problems, because they have the tenacity to keep at it and keep working at it and finding, like that example we just gave, where there's those 2 pennies are and balancing that checkbook, whereas the director's like, 2 pennies, I'm moving on. Like, that's too little for me. I'm going to live up here in the big cloud. So I think really getting an understanding for that and sharing it with your team. And I know we've spent, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our staff meeting time and the time that we have together really understanding, not only to better connect with our students, but also with our parents who are our customers, because we're a private school, so they pay our salaries, making sure we're meeting them in their communication styles where they're at, so that together we can continue to grow the school and to make sure that we're making the best of the situations that we have in front of us.
Well, very good. Thank you so much, Debbie. I always appreciate your time and your dedication to educating us and giving of your breadth of knowledge. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen. Here we go. It'll be the same thing because we're good there. I want to thank the organizations that have made this webinar possible today. To our attendees, please look for an email with a link to a replay of this event soon. You're welcome to share that with friends and family. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for you and your life and your financial questions. Let's see, I'm just making sure that works. All right. So all you need to do is go to advicechaser.com and find out more by clicking on the Find the Advisor link. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming. We will see y'all at another webinar soon. Thanks, Debbie, and we'll see everyone again. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.